Hi, everybody. Today's RIS voice is Eilidh Izat of the Practice in the Western Isles, Izat Arundel. You may have seen her recent project, Coachan na Craig, which won an RIS award. If you haven't, do have a look because it's a gorgeous little house nestled on the coast in Harris. So, Eilidh, thank you for joining us this
Thank you
morning.
very much.
It's great to see you.
Good to see
Um,
you.
We've got some standard questions, so I'm going to kick off on them for this. But I also want to talk to you about the fact that you've recently become the president of the Highlands and Islands chapter, and maybe just chat very briefly about how you found that and what you want to do and what you think the challenges are.
Yeah, definitely. I'm absolutely delighted to have become the president of the Highlands and Islands chapter. And for me, I'm quite new to the area, so it's been interesting coming into this chapter with quite like a fresh set of eyes, I suppose, and fresh set of eyes to the chapter, but also to the area and to the people. So at the moment, I feel like I'm doing a sort of crash course on who everybody is and where everybody is practicing, because it's the biggest chapter. As I understand, geographically anyway, of the RIAS. I read online anyway that it's approximately the size of Belgium, so it's a huge area that we cover, and we have around 200 architects in members in the area. Some are retired. I think a lot are retiring this year. So there's a change that's happening, which I'm quite conscious of people who have contributed so much to the profession and who know the area inside out, and how we pass this knowledge on to this new generation. And what I'm keen on doing is yeah, just continuing that voice. I want to kind of reflect the culture that's here, and not lose that knowledge. So I'm bringing people back together. COVID was a time when everything is sort of maybe disintegrated a little bit. We can do a lot online now, which is great, but it's also, there's nothing better than just being in a room together. And I think I felt like that at the RIAS Awards. And it's just when you see those familiar faces, it's just that there's kind of cross pollination that happens. So I'm wanting to get more activity within each of the areas of the chapter, just to get that. It's not loneliness, it's not isolation. It can be sometimes, but it's just, yeah, getting people back together so that you don't feel alone as a person, but also any of the challenges you face in practice that are probably going to be faced by other people. So yeah, getting everyone back together and continuing the knowledge. So that's what my goals are anyway.
It sounds good. It sounds like Kaylee.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly,
probably
perfect.
yeah. I'm reflecting also because the Stirling chapter, which is small
Yeah,
but not so geographically challenged, but they've got together recently and what's the word, reframed the chapter as something where
yeah,
the
yeah. What's
together.
been really interesting, I took on the role without having a lot of forethought into what it was or what I wanted to do with it. And something that's been, so nice already has been meeting the other chapter presidents, and even just that kind of everyone's in different, obviously different areas. They're coming from different types of practice backgrounds, and it's that was a really surprising, lovely part of the role which I wasn't expecting. So it's, yeah, we're talking about having a chapter presidents meetup, and I think we're going to have it in Stirling. So
Great. No, I mean, to be honest, that's what RIS is, an incorporation of the
yeah.
chapters.
Hmm.
And we need to make sure that we're the connector and the
Yeah.
enabler in that regard. And I think when, that's something that we're so conscious of. So we're just delighted that the chapter presidents are getting together as they
Hmm.
have in the past. But I think this is a time when there are more challenges, more needs, and more to learn from chapter to chapter.
Yeah, definitely.
So turning more generally about you, why did you become an architect?
Yeah. Do you know, I have it's quite an easy answer, because it's my vocation. It's completely in my blood, in my bones. I've known since I was very little that I wanted to be an architect. I think a lot of the influence comes from, so my mum's dad was an architect, and he worked for Fife County Council at the time, so he was post-war. He actually had to split. He was studying at the Glasgow School of Art, and he had to split it up because of World War II. So he ended up going to build Bailey bridges during World War II, and then came back to finish his part two at Glasgow after. So he's of like the Izzy Metstein, that kind of era. And I think that's maybe that his work, and he really was a practitioner. He loved he lived opposite Dundee and Newport-on-Tay, and he had this beautiful house that they built, a modernist house that looks over the River Tay. So whenever we'd be going down to visit, his study was just full of drawings and models, and the conversations that we were having were about tradespeople and working together. And I think a lot of that has come through into my understanding of that's something you can do with your life. I understand it's the same if you have a family of doctors, often that the lineage continues. So maybe that's where that acknowledgement, realization has come from. But my parents also nurtured it from quite early on. So yeah, I left school early. Left school when I was 17, and absolutely knew that's what I wanted to do. My art teacher had said, when you leave school early, you have to have permission from all of your key teachers, and my art teacher wouldn't sign the form because he said he wanted me to do fine art. So maybe that's a different path that I can follow at a different time. But yeah, it was, so left school. I chose to go, I got accepted into the 5 University of Scotland, but I wanted to go to Glasgow School of Art, I think because continue on from my grandpa. And yeah, I got accepted in, and gosh, it was, so studying my part 1 there, absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed that time, and I still got a lot of friends from that era. So I started studying in 2006, I think, and did I? Yes, 2006, and then 2009. So that was the end of my part 1. During that time, it was the recession. I was watching people in the years above, really struggling to get work. So I pivoted directly into the only school at the time that was accepting applications into part 2 without having experience at part 1 was Edinburgh. And so I applied to Edinburgh and transitioned across to do my part 2 without having a year out. I just kind of, I didn't want to waste a year. And I just thought, well, if I can, let's just go for it. And if I don't get in, then I'll work somewhere else. But yeah, graduated in 2011. Again, it's a time in the industry when I think practices were still recovering financially from the recession, and it was really difficult to get jobs. People were being very nervous with hiring. So I applied to a few different international practices. But as I was studying my part 2, they were holding the competition for the V&A Museum in Dundee, which my grandpa, who looked over the site, was very active in. And we were following the whole competition, and they had an exhibition in Dundee of the finalists. So they had each finalist had a model, and we went to the exhibition and we listened to some of the talks and the presentations. And my grandpa was like, I think Kengo Kuma might win. He's like, I think that's the strongest one. So if you were going to get a job with anybody of building anything, maybe you should apply to him. So they had their sort of satellite office for Scotland was based in Edinburgh at the time. I think the practice has since closed, but I had applied to that practice, and then also sent an email to, honestly, like info@Kengokuma. And about a month later, I got an email back from the project architect saying, we'd love you to be involved. And I was thinking, I'm going to get a place in Edinburgh. That's great. I can just keep my flat here. And he said, but do you want to just come to Tokyo instead? So I said, okay. So that was my first job working at Kengokuma, which is quite incredible. In Tokyo, and it was a bit of a culture shock in every possible way. I'm glad I went straight from studying, because studying when it's in your part 2, it's quite intense. Working in Tokyo in an architecture office is quite intense. So that was thinking back, such an amazing time. Everyone was so proficient at their jobs, and you really you kind of go into it with a responsibility that you're wanting to contribute at a high level. So the stage that I was working at the V&A was during I suppose they were doing the building warrant. So it was before it was that transition between the conceptual stage and then going into the detailing. And we're trying to achieve a lot of that, the sort of magic that Kengokuma is known for, before a lot of the cost savings have to come in at a later stage at tender. And it was magical. And I've got a really close set of friends who I met there. Jack and I got married last year, and a lot of them came. So it was really special. But after that, I was still conscious that Scotland was such a difficult time, that recession for practices in Scotland. and there still wasn't a lot of job offerings coming up. So I applied to different places again, looking around to see where I wanted to work. And I wanted to work somewhere that had a similar landscape to Scotland. And I've always been inspired by the West Coast. So I applied to practices in Norway. And I ended up getting a job for a company called Helen and Hard, who are based in Stavanger. And they do a lot of glulam, quite organic structures. And yeah, that was another big shift from from working in Tokyo to being somewhere rural. I suppose Stavanger is quite a rural city in Norway. And yeah, that was I went in thinking I was going to learn more about how to work in the types of landscapes that we've got in Scotland. But actually, well, I did learn that, but I was amazed at the how they were running practices. Norway's got a lot of oil money, so there is a sort of grace that happens with that. But everyone was on equal pay. Everyone was on, well, obviously it's structured, but I mean, men and women were on equal pay. And then there was also equal maternity, paternity leave. The work structure was very nice. You kind of finish at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock every day. And earlier in summer, and everybody takes July off and you all go to your summer house. So it was, the kind of the work ethic and enjoying a landscape was something I really learned from Norway. But after that, came back to Scotland. Scotland's in my heart. I love it here. I don't think, well, I would happily live in some of those other places I worked, but yeah, I love it here. So I came back and I worked through a different sets of practices. And when I was at RIAS Hall, I sat my part 3. And after that, I worked in some commercial practices, but it was after I'd sat my part 3, I'd worked at RIAS Hall for a few years, and I pivoted into residential work. And that kind of was a springboard into setting up HIAA Arundel and where we are today. So there's a rundown.
Whistle stop tour. It's quite interesting. It's a bit of a Norwegian connection there. When one of our voices was Oli Wig from
Yeah.
Oslo. So it's nice to we're keen on making more connections with our Out With members.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can use you to connect with some Norwegians and some Japanese maybe. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, actually, on that, we were thinking. I was talking with Rory from Dualcast, who's helping me do the Highlands and Islands
yeah,
conference this year, and we're talking about. I think we're going to try and get a few different voices from rural practices. I don't really like using the word rural. I don't feel, none of us who live in a rural place feel that we're very rural, but it's an easy way to describe a situation of a practice. So yeah, that would be really nice to connect up, and that's maybe a nice way to join the dots.
yeah. No, I just on that one I shouldn't, but when I was working in South Uist with talking to some members of the community, they said to me, "Don't call us remote. I'm closer to the co-op than some."
Yeah.
It was just a really,
Yeah,
it's
the
good.
context of remote, it depends what it is in your head.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm just going to move on to what's your favorite place, town, or building?
Oh, I know that's a really tricky one. Oh, um, I think I like um, what's obviously I'm going to choose places in Scotland. What are places that have like made like an impact on me? Do you know what? Before Lord of Monteith carried out I shouldn't be saying this. Before Lord of Monteith carried out the renovation of High Sunderland, I thank you Modern House for secretly letting me in, but I told my mum went for a viewing around the house, and I was like, "Mum, arrange a viewing, go so I can go and have a look." So I met 5 other architects, and we were all like, "Don't pretend don't say we know each other," because the whole day was taken up by people nosing around. But that was, yeah, it was. High Sunderland is very very special, and I think there's like a craft that comes through the collaboration between the architect and the client is so incredibly strong on that project, and that just shows for me that was highlighting. It gives me like hope. Working sometimes with clients is very tricky, but that was just a really beautiful example of the strength of this collaboration that can come out of working in practice, residential practice. And the studio as well, my gosh, that's incredible down at the bottom of the garden. And I know that I think it's got a place in everybody's heart in Scotland. We're all wanting to see it saved. Other
Yes.
than that, I like I kind of take more inspiration from older structures, buildings around Scotland. A lot of the cathedrals, Dunkeld is beautiful, Dunfermline is beautiful, and there's Dunfermline is a place where I think it's it's like a really curious setting, but it's got all these little gems around, and you can see how important it was in the past. But there's a lot of potential there. So yeah, it's kind of those places that that kind of hover in my mind.
Yeah, I think I think our towns are things we don't fully appreciate.
Yeah.
And there's an exhibition of Irish towns as part of the Archifringe down in the Brigade.
Oh, amazing.
I
Okay.
saw a picture of the Irish end, so do get to see it if you can, because it's
Yes,
talking
I will.
precisely
That's
about
good.
it.
Thank you for that.
Anyway, so I'm going to sign off with one big question. And it's basically, I'm going to try and tie in the fact that, we've got our challenges, we've got the RIS, and I just wonder where you think the RIS can do more to meet our challenges. No, sorry.
Yeah, I've been asking, as the president of Highlands and Islands, I've been asking myself the same question of like, what's the purpose of the chapter? What's, again, coming into something with kind of fresh eyes and not really having much involvement before. So I think there's it's like a multifaceted question or multifaceted answer. I think there's, from me personally, and this is my own, this is something that I need to do probably more than RIAS, but the I didn't really know the structure of RIAS before I kind of really have become more involved in the Highlands and Islands in the last few years. And I think that's something, maybe I know that RIAS is doing a lot through education at the moment. So bringing in students so that, from a very early age in your career, you're aware of what the structure is and how that works or how it's meant to work. Because I think once you've got that structure in your head, you can understand the level of participation that you might be able to have, the different working groups that you might be able to get involved in. So that awareness is a big thing that I think practitioners and RIAS probably need to tackle together. And then from that, I kind of see RIAS as, I don't know who else would fill the role of lobbying for our profession in Scotland. So that's, for me, if the structure needs to work to be able to lobby well, because it is, like you're saying, it represents the chapters, it's a direct representation of the members. And so without direct involvement from the members, it's difficult to know what to lobby exactly. But I feel that should be the it's a sort of triangular structure, and then RIAS is using its voice and its weight to influence policy, to I don't know, make clients aware the value of architecture. That's something which I think is in a bit of a crisis moment, not just in Scotland. I think it's across the board, losing influence, losing responsibility, and that comes with fees and the structure of procurement. So it's a heavy burden for RIAS, but it's the responsibility of the members, and it only comes through us working together. So yeah.
Thank you. No, that's so, it crystallizes what we
We're
need.
trying to do.
Yeah. And I think, I would end on this one, which is it's a call to engage members in the first place and collectively, let's call it Kaylee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed, Eilidh. It's been great talking to you, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.